Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, hey, it's Lex at Mac's Future, and this is episode 101 of the iPad Podcast. And today is June 3rd, 2012, and we have a lot of iPad stuff to cover. So let's get to it. And remember, this is a chit-chat-free podcast all about the iPad. You can support it by giving it a positive review in the iTunes Store. It helps other people find this podcast. Also, there's a video version where I show screenshots of the various stories or products I discuss, and you can see that on YouTube under the Mac's Future channel, or on Blip TV, or under Apple Things in the iTunes Store. So thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Okay, so the first story is that the iPad third generation might soon be selling officially in China. Now, we know that it's unofficially being sold in China because obviously in the past there's been all these efforts to smuggle in the iPad into China and sell it. But according to GigaOM's website, which is reporting on the Wall Street Journal, basically the website of China's Telecommunication Equipment Certification Center indicates that an Apple device with third generation or 3G data capabilities has been issued the license needed for the company to begin sales in China. And it's going to be on China Unicom, which I guess is the second largest cell phone data carrier in China. And I think this is just going to help Apple's bottom line. Apple is a huge hit in China, and I'm sure the third generation iPad is going to be a huge hit. Now, it says here in late March, a Wi-Fi only version of the device was approved by Chinese regulators, but it never went on sale. And apparently they say there it's likely has to do with Apple's ongoing battle with Preview. And it says that ProView, that's the Taiwanese company that claims it owns the iPad trademark in China. It says the two sides have been flirting with settling, but there hasn't been a resolution. I think Apple will find a way to get a resolution with that little company in China. Anyways, this is good for people in China. I'm sure they want the third generation iPad as much as the people in the United States and other countries do. Now, there was an interesting story in GigaOM this week on May 31st. The headline was, New Netflix iOS app capitulates to bandwidth caps. So apparently there's been an update to Netflix, and I'll take a look at that. It makes it look much better. But one of the features of the new Netflix app, both for the iPad and the iPhone, is that you can now toggle on and off the 3G or 4G connectivity. So what the gist of the story is that, like carriers like Verizon and AT&T are trying to convince companies that provide content like Netflix to pay for the bandwidth its subscribers consume on their networks. And according to GigaOM, by putting this toggling off and on feature, Netflix, quote, delivered a rather oblique response. In other words, it's giving, according to the article, iPhone customers the option of turning off cellular access to Netflix completely and instead relying on old-fashioned Wi-Fi to deliver their movies and TV shows. So the gist of the article is that, with more customers of cell phone companies being under pressure to limit, the data usage because there are no longer unlimited data plans, we may be seeing more of this. In other words, giving people the ability to shut off cell phone data connection. Now, Apple has long limited certain things over cell phone data, and I think they did it because AT&T or Verizon just didn't want to use up a lot of bandwidth. For example, unless you jailbreak your iPhone or iPad, you can't really download apps or music or videos that are a certain size from the iTunes Store. So, but the weird thing is, for example, you can't download podcasts on the iPad over 4G that are over a certain size. But if you use a non-Apple app, like I use this Podcaster app, I can download larger apps over 3G or 4G. So I think we're going to see more and more of this unless consumers get some sort of freedom from cell phone carriers. I think what GigaOM's reporting on and what Netflix is doing, you're going to see more apps have that ability to toggle off the 4G or 3G data connection. Anyways, it's pretty interesting. Okay, so the fall is getting close, and one of the interesting things that's going to happen in the fall is Windows 8 is going to be released on ARM tablets, and Windows 8 is obviously Microsoft's tool, and in terms of a tablet. So the question is, will it really compete with the iPad? And the Washington Post had the following story this week on June 1st. Windows 8 tablets from Acer and Toshiba will challenge iPad's dominance. And according to this article, I guess very soon Toshiba and Asus Tech and Acer will unveil tablets running Microsoft Corp's Windows 8 operating system. That's going to be next week, right before Apple's WWDC. And it says there's a show in Taipei called Computex, and that Toshiba will show a tablet and notebook device, and they're also going to be in the game for these Windows 8 tablets. And also, apparently, at the show, Asus Tech will present tablets with detachable keyboards similar to the current Transformer model. So the question is, will Windows 8 running on ARM based chips, act as a real competitor to the iPad? And I'll tell you, like in the enterprise, it seems like iPad right now is the only tablet that has getting any traction. Obviously, the BlackBerry, tablets have gone nowhere. And I don't think enterprise is really grabbing Android-based tablets. But Windows has an advantage because most of the enterprise has, Windows running on PCs. It clearly has like a monopoly. So the thing to really wonder is, to what extent will businesses embrace Windows 8? Now, they might go for it, particularly if Microsoft Office is greatly integrated with Windows 8. On the other hand, the iPad has a huge head start in terms of, just being developed and having, 600, hundreds of thousands of apps and productivity apps. And so the question is, what will enterprise do? Will enterprise pick one over the other? Maybe a lot of enterprises will pick both, get some Windows 8 tablets and then also get some iPads and see what works out better. Now, it's nice to imagine what the iPad's going to be like in a number of years. And The Verge had an interesting story, which makes me think that the future of the iPad is going to be really spectacular. And that's because of major advances in technology. And one technology that I think is just really exciting is display technology. And The Verge has a story on June 1st from a guy named Jeff Blagden that points out, it's entitled Sharp's 498 PPI LSD hopes to kickstart the crystal IGZO transistor revolution. So what is this? So apparently there's a technology, and they have a picture here of either Japanese or Korean woman showing some bendable display coming out, and it looks like film. It's got the thickness of like film, but it's a display that's bendable. And basically, it says here in the article that Sharp and research company Semiconductor Energy Laboratory are announcing a new jointly developed advancement in thin film transistor TFT technology called CAAC IGZO, which stands for C-axis aligned crystal indium gallium zinc oxide. Boy, that's a mouthful. Now, they believe, according to this article, that this will revolutionize display technology. And they think that, that this is going, apparently they discovered this by working with semiconductors. They stumbled across something called a new crystalline structure that has better electrical properties and will allow them to make even smaller transistors and decrease power consumption. and increase touchscreen performance and produce even higher resolution displays. So this stuff is very exciting. It says that Sharp and this other company showed off their research at a press event in Tokyo, and they brought with them a 6-inch display that had a resolution of 2,560 by 1,600, and so it had a pixels per square inch of 498, which is way above that of the iPhone. I think the iPhone's in like the low 300s. And it says, now, earlier there was an announcement by LG where they had some incredible, screen technology. But the thing that's amazing is that 498 PPI will just be so detailed, the human eye is not going to be able to tell the difference. And The Verge has some pictures, showing the difference. So what we're seeing is sort of an arms race in screens for things like tablets. Now, The Verge, they also covered LG, had this 5-inch 1080 smartphone display that they were showing off, which has a resolution, let's say a 5-inch screen called the Optimus View of 1024 by 768. And that also had 404 ppi, which is, pretty high. So the question is, how soon is this going to come to Apple? Because you have to imagine Apple is, closely looking at any sort of developments in screen technology. And frankly, Apple, with its incredibly deep war chest, is going to probably try to buy up any new advancement in technology that increases screens. So I imagine that one day the iPad will be, that Apple will have thin, little, cheap iPads that are bendable like paper, and you're going to be able to play games on them or read books. And I imagine with this bendable technology for screens, you're going to be able to make super light, super thin displays that take up very little power and make tablet-like devices really ubiquitous. So, I think this is just around the corner if they're coming up with this stuff. Just imagine what the iPad is going to look 5 years from now, right? It's going to look nothing like the third generation iPad or the second or the first. It's going to be, I bet you it's going to be a lot thinner and a lot more powerful. And, I think we're living in a very, interesting age where there's just quantum leaps in advancement of technology. Okay, so, one interesting story, a blogger by the name of David Smith had an interesting story out about how iAd actually is doing, he likes iAd and he's a developer. So basically, if you're a developer for the iPhone or iPad, you can incorporate Apple's own advertising system called iAd. And Apple rolled it out with much fanfare a couple of years ago. And some people have been thinking it hasn't been doing well. But at least this developer really likes it. And he says for two simple reasons. One, the quality of the advertisements that appear in his app are consistently better with iAd. And he says that iAd consistently performs better financially than any other platform. So he makes the following post. And by the way, I found this story via Daring Fireball, John Gruber's website. And I have a link to that site, which then links to this davidsmith.org site. So for quality, he says, quality is a bit of a subjective measure, he says, but I've yet to see an iAd placement that I wouldn't feel comfortable showing in my app. Apple screens and manages its advertising with what appear to be a high level of control. He says with other third-party ad networks, you never know what you're going to get it. He says he's often seen non-retina optimized, gaudy placements, sometimes even promoting products and services he'd rather not be associated with this. Now, for financial performance, he says that it's better for developers IAD. For example, he says that over the last 30 days, he's had 6 million requests, 4.2 million impressions, and he gets revenue of $1.14 revenue per 1,000 impressions. And for comparison, in a competing platform, he would get 45 cents per 1,000 requests. So he's getting more than double dollar revenue than on the competing advertising platform. So, you know, I guess if you're a developer, maybe it's better to go with iAds in your iPad app. Okay, so the iPad's, you know, heavily involved in everyday life, and so it's going to be heavily involved on national television. So the other night, apparently, Jimmy Fallon, on his Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, had a little video skit of himself in a character role where he plays this goofy guy who's, I don't know, he's got like an Australian accent or something like that, and he's sitting up in a tree, and he's basically poo-pooing the iPad and saying, what is the iPad? And, you know, can I just like get like a notebook and draw in it? But in the end, you know, after making fun of the iPad, he's sitting with like a woman who's really a doll in the tree, and he likes the iPad, I guess. Anyways, it's just a goof. It's a goofy video. I'm not going to play it on this podcast, but I have a link to it on maxfutures.com show notes for this podcast, so check it out. Now, the third generation iPad is different than the second generation iPad, but not only in the fact that it has a Retina display, and not only in the fact that it has a LTE 4G cell phone data connection that the iPad 2 has. It has something else that hasn't gotten a lot of press, and that is that it has Bluetooth 4.0 in it. Bluetooth is a wireless technology. Now, the iPhone 4S has Bluetooth 4.0, but a lot of people, I don't think, understand the significance of Bluetooth 4.0 technology. But Mike Egland does, and he's on Google+, but he also wrote an article on houzz.com, HOUZZ.com, and I have a link. And he makes a really good point about how Bluetooth 4.0 will change remote control. So apparently Bluetooth, this newest version of Bluetooth, which Apple embraced in the current generation iPad and also the iPhone 4S, is very robust, and it basically allows better communication back and forth, and also has much better sort of battery life or powering life. And it's something that he says is really going to change the way remotes can work. So it's something I really am looking forward to. Now, Wikipedia really does a great job of explaining the significance of Bluetooth 4.0. It says that Bluetooth 4.0 is has as a feature Bluetooth Low Energy, which is it's saying that devices using Bluetooth Low Energy wireless technology are expected to consume a fraction of the power of classic Bluetooth-enabled products. And it says here that in many cases, products will be able to operate more than a year on a button cell battery without recharging. It says it will be possible to have sensors such as thermometers operating continuously and intermittently communicating with other devices like a mobile phone. It also goes on to say that this may increase the concerns for privacy, as when the remote, low-power, continuously on sensor would be present in devices with BLE. So it also says it's a greater technology maybe than something called near-field communication. It says Bluetooth technology and near-field communication may both be used as short-range communication technologies. However, allowed transmission power for NFC is strongly limited, implying short range, while Bluetooth technology has a range that reaches up to 100 meters, depending on its class. It says integration with mobile phones is increasing, whereas Bluetooth technology is already part of almost all phone types. So why is Apple putting Bluetooth 4.0 in the current generation iPad? And I'm thinking that it could be because Apple has maybe also is going to use the iPad and the iPhone for payment purposes, and have a great payment system. There's a lot of people think that Apple's going to enter into the digital wallet area. So, check out Mike Egland's article, but I think it's very significant that the third generation iPad has Bluetooth 4.0. Another article that caught my eye this week, it was from PC Magazine, entitled "Apple TV is the Anti-iPad" by Dan Kosts. And the point of his article is, that the Apple TV is not like a huge seller like the iPad, and not as glamorous as the iPad, and not as significant to Apple's bottom line as the iPad, that it's sort of like a hobby. Apple's selling some, 2 or 3 million of them, but nothing like the 65 million or so iPads. But his point is that, watch the Apple TV, that eventually it could blossom into something bigger. But I'll tell you, I think the Apple TV, anybody who's got an iPad should really consider getting an Apple TV, because it's a great complement to an iPad. It really, with the mirroring and stuff, you can shoot stuff over. So the Apple TV is just great because it allows you to mirror anything from your iPad 2 or iPad 3 to the Apple TV. So it's great for presentations. If you're doing PowerPoint or keynote presentations and you bring along an Apple TV, and through a Wi-Fi connection, you could just show anything on a big screen. But it's also great for gaming. Also, I really think it's the future of television, because you've got all these great apps on your iPad that allow you to watch television on your iPad, and you can wirelessly send them over to your Apple TV. And it's only like $99. So to me, it's a great accessory to the iPad, and really makes the iPad a great television device. So the Apple TV is not the anti-iPad. The Apple TV is a great addition to the iPad. Now let's talk about some apps. GigaOM.com has a nice story about a voice over IP service that now has an iPad app, and it's seeking to rival Skype. So the app, it comes from a company called Rebtel, R-E-B-T-E-L. The article is entitled "Rebtel Expands the Voice over IP Calling Assault with iPad App." And basically, the article says that Rebtel has 17 million users, and the Rebtel app allows people to access the voice over IP service over Wi-Fi and 3G on iPhone, Android, and PCs. And it said before, iPad users could install Rebtel's iPhone optimized app, but now there's a dedicated iPad app which gives everybody a fuller experience, including a larger screen and real estate. So, if you're into voice over IP and looking for an alternate service, you might want to go with Rebtel. Now, Rebtel basically allows you to do landline calls. I think it's like 1 cent a minute or something like that in the United States. And then there's a list of countries that you can call landlines to around the world. And it's pretty much competitive with Skype and, Google Voice in terms of calling landlines. So you might want to check it out. I've never used it, but it's a low-cost voice over IP service, and it's called Rebtel, R-E-B-T-E-L. One of the more intriguing stories in the past week was that someone was selling on eBay what was considered to be the prototype of the iPad. And I'm looking at a website called gadgetbox.msnbc.msn.com, and apparently somebody sold a prototype of the original iPad, and it sold for $10,200 on eBay. And the seller described it in the following way. It said, "This is one of a very small amount of Apple prototype devices, and you rarely see these on eBay. This iPad has 16 gigabytes of capacity and is incredibly unique. Apple prototyped these iPads to have this connector late in the process, and at the last minute decided to remove them. There are patent drawings and leaked casings that show the indents for both dock connector holes, but this unit has both dock connectors, and both are full functional for charging this iPad and connecting. So one of the unique things of this iPad is that it had 2 dock connections. I think Apple ended up pulling this listing on eBay, because it was probably, maybe misappropriated from Apple. But I don't know how it got on eBay, but it does look like that at some point Apple was considering to have 2 dock connectors on the iPad. So anyways, it's a novelty. The seller of this device told Wired magazine, "Judging by how Apple works, it's mostly likely stolen, but I'm not sure about that. I can't give much information about the Apple device without revealing who specifically I am," end quote. So the auction, I don't know if the auction went through. I think Apple may have contacted eBay and pulled the auction, but it's interesting to see what Apple was considering in the development of the iPad. Okay, so one thing that I've been waiting for quite a while is when Microsoft is actually going to put Microsoft Office on the iPad, because that's one of the big productivity applications, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And Apple Insider has a story that says that Microsoft Office for iPad to launch on November 10th. And I guess the report came from The Daily, which is a Murdoch-controlled digital newspaper. And it said that that development team at Microsoft finished work on the project last month, and the design team responsible for Office on iPad was also said to have wrapped up their work soon after. And it goes on to say this app is now in the hands of a usability team that appraises software that utilizes the Metro design language for Metro compliance and suggests changes as needed. The reporter named Matt Hickey wrote. The quote goes on to say, "When approved by the team, the app likely will go to Apple for App Store approval, which could take a couple of weeks," end quote. And so, I have a feeling that it's going to come out, Microsoft Office for the iPad, shortly after Microsoft Windows 8 Metro on tablets comes out. Because I don't think the people who want Windows 8, to succeed on tablets, wants to give the crown jewel to Apple before the crown jewel is on Windows 8 tablets. So my guess is until Windows 8 comes out, you're not going to see Microsoft Office on the iPad. But I think Microsoft's going to want to hedge its bets with Windows 8 tablet. And given that, there's already, 65 or 70 million iPads floating around, Microsoft is going to want to hedge its bets and put Microsoft Office on the iPad. So I think it's going to be sometime in the fall that we're going to probably finally get Microsoft Office on the iPad. And I think it's going to be a huge seller. I think a lot of people in business want Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Microsoft Excel working on the iPad. Okay, well, we all know kids love the iPad, and we know that toddlers love the iPad, but this story, I don't know, does it say more about the iPad or more about how tough airline crews are? But there's a story on Cnet entitled "Toddler Has iPad Deprivation Tantrum, Gets Kicked Off Plane." So apparently on Alaska Airlines, there was a 3-year-old, and he was playing quietly with an iPad before takeoff, according to this story. However, when he received instructions to turn off the machine, he hit the roof, the toddler, and refused to sit properly with a seatbelt on, according to the article. So apparently the 3-year-old, according to the article, threw such severe tantrum that that he and his family were removed from the plane. Apparently, well, and apparently the 3-year-old is the son of a Washington State resident, and the family was flying to St. Martin Island from Seattle. You know, look, I think that airline crews are getting kind of crazy, because this is like, I think, the second story I read about children and their family being thrown off of airplanes because they're crying too much. I mean, I just think that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, we all live in a society with kids, and kids are going to cry, and we just sort of deal with it. That being said, you know, I do think it's, you know, ridiculous that these airlines make people turn off their iPhone or iPad or BlackBerry or other electronic device when they take off. We know the famous story of Alec Baldwin not turning off his iPad because he was playing Word with Friends. But the reality is there's no evidence that these electronic devices interfere with the planes in any way. In fact, I know that half the people have them on. And so if these devices were really somehow harming the airplane, we'd have a lot of crashes, because, you know, on a lot of flights that I fly on, I see people operating their BlackBerry or their iPhone or their iPad and ignoring what the crew says. So I think, you know, I think they should just change the rule. I think they should just allow people to operate their iPad and their iPhone when the plane's taking off. And frankly, if that happened, maybe this 3-year-old wouldn't have had the tantrum. Okay, so one device I've had a chance to play around with in the last week or two is a new microphone that works both with the iPad and the iPhone with no batteries, and it just plugs into the USB dock of the iPad or iPhone, and it's something called the Tascam IAM 2 stereo microphone. And it's not expensive. I picked it up at B&H Photo, I think, for, I don't know, with tax, like $65. And, you know, on paper, it's a very appealing device. It's a stereo microphone, and it has its own preamp and analog to digital converter for low noise and great audio quality. That's what it sells. It also has a limiter in it, so you can put the limiter on it so it would limit low sounding, you know, or hiss noise and get that out. It says here, unlike mics that use the built-in iPhone preamp, the IM2 can handle up to 125 decibel sound levels to capture the loudest concerts and instruments without distortion. It says here there's also a stereo limiter to tame sudden loud sounds. It says the microphone level is adjustable with a knob on the side, making it quick to adjust without even looking at the unit. And also it's powered through the dock connector, and it also has a USB input so that you can charge your device for long recordings, either through a computer or a Tascam power adapter. And the device works with any recording app, including the built-in video camera, according to the specs, and it records in stereo sound while you capture high-definition video on your phone. And they also have an app that Tascam has released with a free app called the Portable. I don't know what it's called, but it's a sort of a basic Tascam app. Actually, I think you can see it on their website. So anyways, look, I'm going to do a review and put it on YouTube. Here are some pictures on the website of what it looks like. It, you know, it's pretty small, and it has sort of tube-like microphones that you can swing around to face you or in the direction that you're filming. So I've got sort of mixed reactions to it. I mean, one thing is it does sound smoother and there's less noise when you record, although it doesn't record very loudly. And so maybe it's like that because for concerts, this you know, it can handle loud noise. But if you're recording just like everyday people talking, the sound isn't going to be very loud. But on the other hand, it's very clean, the sound. There's not a lot of you know, sound effects or, you know, static. So it's not a loud recording, but you can boost it in post-production. You know, if you bring it into a like iMovie or Final Cut Pro, you can boost the audio. So I'm sort of torn as to whether I'm going to keep it. I can return it. And my other concern is there's a rumor that the next iPhone is not going to have a traditional dock that the iPad and the iPhone currently have. And if that's the case, then this Tascam IAM 2 is not going to be of any use for the next generation iPhone. So that's something to keep in mind. So on the other hand, there's, you know, not a lot of mics that work with the iPhone and you know, and work just on the power of the iPhone. There are mics that work with the iPad because the iPad has a bigger battery and can handle powering external mics. So for example, this Samsung microphone that I'm recording now can plug in directly to the iPad. But this Tascam IAM 2 can plug into both the iPad and the iPhone. One other issue with it, though, is because it's plugged in directly into the iPad or iPhone, you have to be careful about using it while you're using the iPhone or iPad, because it'll record the tapping or the vibrations of you tapping on the screen of the iPhone or iPad. So that's something else I discovered, you know, because other mics that use sort of a USB cord or something to connect to the iPhone or iPad, they're not directly attached to the iPad. But this thing is flush with the iPad, so if you're recording while using the buttons, it might you know, pick up some of the taps that you do. But overall, I mean, it does have cleaner, less static-free sound than, you know, the internal microphone of the iPad or even the microphone and headphones for your earphones, your Apple earphones. So anyways, you might want to check it out. I'm going to do a more, I did a sound test that I'm going to have on my YouTube review, so stay tuned for that. Now, if you're looking for some useful devices that work with your iPad, this caught my eye. There's something from a company called Standzout. That's STANDZOUT.com, and it's basically a floor stand for the iPad, the iPad 2, and the iPad 3. And on its website, it goes for $99.95. And basically, you know, in the pictures, they have like somebody in bed, and they've got this, the stand is sort of like this long, like lamp-like arm where you can attach your iPad and you don't have to hold it. So they have a picture of a woman sitting in bed, and she's got this like stand sort of curving out over her bed, holding the iPad, and then she doesn't have to hold it. And they show her lying back with this like iPad hovering over her. You could also use it like as a music stand. If you put a lot of music in PDF forms on your iPad, you could put this on the stand and it'll hold it. So it's kind of cool. It's they've got even, let's see, more images here showing the somebody playing the guitar, and I guess they're looking at the music that's on the iPad and holding the stand. And again, they show a young lady hands-free reviewing the iPad. So if you need a stand, you know, I mean, I could see there's a great app that's like a teleprompter, right? So I could see this being great for somebody doing teleprompting, you know, using the iPad as a teleprompter. So this is, you know, it's a decent concept. It's called the Standzfree floor stand, and I have a link to the show notes on maxfuture.com for this. Okay, so cultofmac.com points out in an article entitled "Wired's iPad app goes behind the scenes on how the iconic magazine came to be." Well, they point out that, you know, Wired was one of the first magazines to be on the iPad. You know, it's a great computer magazine. It's been around for a long time. And they have, I guess, a free version or a download in the Wired app, magazine app, that you can get. And basically, they have a 12,000-word oral history and archival images included in I guess a reissue of Wired. Oh, I get it. It's basically the whole history of the magazine. I thought it was about how they got to be on the iPad. So here's the quote as listed on Cult of Mac's website. It says, "As far as we were concerned, making this free for all of our readers who have supported Wired over the past 20 years was the only option," says Howard Mittman, VP and publisher, Wired. "We knew we wanted to revisit the first issue of our 20th anniversary, and thanks to Adobe, we were able to make this happen. The only thing more exciting than looking back at that issue and seeing how relevant it is today is being able to share it with the Wired community." So basically, you can get like this archival look at the debut of Wired back in January 1993. So if you want to see how much technology has changed, get the Wired app and download this free 12,000-word oral history and archival images and reissue of the original Wired magazine that came out in 1993. So it's a nice treat from the publishers. Okay, so you know, one app that got a recent upgrade is the Bump app. This app's been around for a long time. It's mainly an iPhone app, but you might want to consider getting it for your iPad. And Bump is an app that's been around for a long time, which allows you to sort of bump contact information from one iPhone to another. And basically, I guess through some sort of Bluetooth or location ability, you know, if you have your contact and you have another friend's iPhone, you just bump together and pass it on. But Bump also has now been upgraded to allow you to bump your photos from your phone or iPad to your computer. So this is a great way to wirelessly transfer photos from your device to your computer. So basically, it says you just go to the website for Bump on your computer browser. You select photos in the Bump app, and then you lightly tap your spacebar with your phone, and they're transferred. So this is version 3.3 of Bump, and it's a pretty cool concept that you can wirelessly send your photos to your computers. Now, this is the kind of thing that you think that Apple will figure out and incorporate into iOS 6 or maybe iOS 7. But for now, if you're looking to wirelessly quickly transfer like some photos from your iPhone, it seems like the Bump app, which is free, is the way to go. So check it out. Okay, so another app that came out that you might want to check out is the Quip app. And Quip is a new Twitter client, and it claims to be designed for the iPad with a special focus on streamlining and condensing your timeline, and especially when it comes to conversations. So it says here, imagine trying to follow a conversation in real life if the group of people involved all spoke backwards while others nearby kept interrupting with random comments. And it's making a good point here. It says it sounds crazy, but that's what it can often be like when you're scanning a normal Twitter timeline. And so with Quip, replies show their context right where they are. You don't have to drill down from the timeline for every reply, because Quip groups them by default and arranges them the right way around you. So it's a cool concept. They have a video that sort of shows how this works, and you know, it might be a clever new way to really, you know, organize like reviewing your tweets. So, you know, the app looks rather slick, and I think it's a clever concept. In other words, use Twitter as a way to communicate and have conversations with people, as opposed to just have it be a fire hose of you know, of information coming to you. So check it out. It's called Quip, Q-U-I-P. And wait, is it free? I think it's free in the App Store. No, I'm sorry. Quip's not free. It is 99 cents. So it's a specially designed Twitter client for the iPad that costs 99 cents. So far the reviews are, one person gives it 5 and one person gives it 1. The person who gave it 1 star said, wanted to love this app, looks good but is riddled with bugs and is laggy as hell. So I don't know, I may purchase this, but it's a brand new app. It's version 1.0, and it's a new form of Twitter client. So you might want to wait a bit to see, you know, if other comments come out regarding whether or not it's buggy. But, you know, it is innovative, at least in its description. Okay, so Apple has started a new thing in the App Store, and that is it highlights like the app of the week, and Apple now is giving away for free iPad and iPhone apps that normally might not be free. And the current app of the week that is free is a pretty good photo editing app called Snapseed. So if you're listening to this today, it could be still free in the App Store. And I have Snapseed, and it is a pretty cool app. Basically, you know, it allows you to adjust your photos. It has autocorrect. You can tweak and tune your photos with Tune Image. You can do all sorts of adjustments. You can experiment with filters. It has various filters like drama, vintage, grunge, and tilt shift. You can add borders. And of course, like many apps, you can share them with various social networks, including Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, and Facebook. So I've had this for a while. It's one of my apps in my arsenal of photo apps. It says it can support 6.25 megapixel images for the iPad, iPhone 3GS, and iPod Touch, and it can support 20.25 megapixel images for the 3rd generation iPad. It says, though, however, larger images will be automatically downsampled by iOS. So it's a pretty cool app. You know, it says what's new in version 1.4. You can share. It says open your Snapseed enhanced images into Instagram and send them on their way. And it's beefed up its black and white effects. So that's new in there, and it also has something known as center focus magic. It says here, taking a cue from our professional filters product, Color Effects Pro, we've improved center focus to make it even more powerful. You can now draw attention to the subject of your photo by adjusting brightness of the inside or outside of your image. You can enhance the overall effect by blurring or turning it off completely. And there's a lot of cropping tools that have been added. The crop tool now includes 7:7:5 aspect ratio. And there's better language support. So look, I mean, Snapseed for a long time has been a great photo editing app, and I think Apple's picking it as the app of the week and to be free because it is a quality app. So if you don't have it, you should snap it up. Okay, so the next product is something I saw on tuaw.com in an article entitled Serious Artists May Appreciate Hand Glider iPad Glove. I've never seen anything like this, but apparently, you know, a lot of people use styluses. They're like resting their hand on the screen of the iPad, and that can sort of, you know, cause a touching action on the screen, which throws off the sensor detection. Now, some apps can sense your the palm of your hand when it's resting, and it doesn't register it, but some apps don't. So apparently there's this product called Hand Glider, which is available in 1- and 2-fingered models. And so basically it's like this glove that goes over your like pinky or pinky and fourth finger, and it lets you rest your hand on the iPad screen without triggering extra touches. So it costs $19.99 for the 1-finger model and $24.99 for the other. Now, I wouldn't get this unless you're doing a lot of stylus use on the iPad, but because it looks kind of goofy, right? I mean, are you going to be in a meeting and have like this sort of bizarre glove that only covers a couple of fingers? So, you know, it's definitely one of the more innovative devices or accessories for the iPad, but I don't know if people are going to be running out to get this iPad glove. Okay, well, the next app is kind of interesting because it's a magazine app called Snap Magazine, but what's particularly interesting about it is that it comes out of the Hipstamatic app. Now, Hipstamatic is a great photo app where you can take really cool photos and use filters. But now the people behind Hipstamatic have come out with their own app called magazine called Snap Magazine, and that's free. And basically it says Snap showcases the driving forces behind global creative culture, and it's basically a monthly snapshot of the world through the lens of Hipstamatic. So I don't know what it's doing, but it sounds like it is taking photos from Hipstamatic, maybe the best content on Hipstamatic, and feeding them to this magazine. And I guess it comes once a month. Now, the initial reviews are that it's crashing a lot, so maybe they didn't do such a great job getting this out, but it's free. The people in the app write, important note to users who have experienced crashes, we have pushed an update to the magazine content to resolve this issue. Please delete and reinstall Snap. So they're acknowledging that there were issues. But anyways, you know, I'm not surprised. I mean, so we have apps now coming out with companion magazines on the iPad. Okay, one of my favorite apps got a really interesting update yesterday, or was it today? But Instapaper is a great app. It's $4.99. But it's a fantastic app. If you don't have it, you should get it. Basically, it allows you to save any articles from the web to your iPhone or iPad wirelessly, and it strips out all the kooky stuff on websites and creates a sort of a nice, neat text environment. So it's a great way to read a lot of stuff later on offline when you're like traveling or not connected to the internet. But But anyways, it's been around for a long time. Marco Arment is the developer behind it. But the most recent update is very intriguing because it added something called background update locations. So it basically, you can now have a setting in there where it can automatically download new articles in the background whenever you enter or leave locations such as your home or workplace. And he thanks the news.me for pioneering this technique. Now it has other features that are upgraded, like better fonts or more fonts, but it's very interesting, this location updates feature. So we know that the iPhone and I guess the iPad too with reminders is location aware. So if you have like an iPad with cell phone data connection, you have a GPS in it, and so you can turn on settings so that, I guess with Instapaper, so that it knows when you're at home and it'll download content. Now, I'm not sure exactly why this is particularly useful to Instapaper because, I can understand, let's say if I had a podcasting app, that downloaded podcasts, that if I didn't want it to download over my cell phone data because it would take up a lot of data, I might want it to only download over Wi-Fi. So this would be useful for that, so that when I got home and was in a Wi-Fi area, it would know to automatically download podcasts. But Instapaper's dealing with websites and articles on websites, really. I mean, how much data does that take? So I can't think of any other use for it. I feel I'd like, if Marco Arment is listening to this podcast, I'd like him to tell me, why is this such a great feature? He has his own podcasts on 5x5 network, and so maybe he'll explain this new feature. I mean, it is kind of nifty that you can basically now tell Instapaper, hey, when you're at work or at home, please go and download whatever apps that you've clicked on a web browser to sync to Instapaper. So anyways, I thought it was interesting, and if somebody knows why this is really useful, please let me know. Okay, another app got an interesting upgrade for the iPad, and that's Dolphin Browser for the iPad. It's a alternative web browser for the iPad, and I think it runs Flash support. So it's up to now version 5.0, and it's got some new features you might want to check out. It can now save passwords. It says forget inputting the same password information again and again. Dolphin will remember and save for future use. You can also has autocomplete now. Dolphin now remembers your browsing history, bookmarks, and searches to make typing in the URL bar even faster. It has something called Dolphin Connect. It can it says check out our slick new design that makes it easier to sync your bookmarks across all your Dolphin devices, and you can share pages, URLs in your email, and there's various stability and improvements. So it's it features something called WebZine, which is fast loading without ads. WebZine simplifies the way you read your favorite news, blogs, and websites. It's sort of like an Instapaper feature. It has something called Gesture, which lets your inner artist out and create a personal symbol to access the websites you use the most. And you can speed dial your favorite sites. And of course it has tabbed browsing and sidebars and bookmark bar, and also full screen mode. So it's a pretty substantial browser, and if you're looking for something different than the Safari browser, this is free, so you might as well download it. It's called Dolphin Browser for iPad. Okay, so one of the challenges with the iPad or iPhone is just there are so many apps, and there is this app that's great at helping you find other apps called App Zap HD. That's AppZappHD, and it's free. And there's a new version out that's designed to be Retina display with the iPad. So it's called AppZap HD, and it has Retina to support. And so basically, here's the description. It's the bargain guide for the App Store. Never miss a sale date. AppZap will instantly inform you about price drops by push or email. And it basically features always up to date with price and seller alerts. There's an app community. Discover your friends' apps. It alerts you to all sales, free apps, and what's newly accessible. So if you're into testing out a lot of free apps, this sort of gives you a place to look for deals and specials. So think of it like as a clearinghouse for all the free and deals that you always see developers giving, sometimes for a week and or a short period of time. So it doesn't take up a lot of data. It's only 16.7 megabytes in size, and it looks like an interesting way to find cheaper or free apps or deals on apps. So it's called AppZap. Okay, so there are a lot of cloud apps like Dropbox and Cubby, and of course Microsoft has its own SkyDrive app for the iPad, and as Engadget just pointed out on June 2nd, Microsoft updated the SkyDrive app for the iPad so that it now has Retina display. And so SkyDrive basically allows you to store files in the cloud and have them sync from your computer to your iPad or other computers. So it's got enhanced file sharing features. In addition, it has you now can upload multiple photos and videos from your iPad to the cloud. I guess before you couldn't do that. I'm not sure. In addition, you have now the ability to open SkyDrive files from within other iOS apps. So anyways, check it out. If you haven't gotten SkyDrive before, it's just another alternative to Dropbox or Cubby or, I don't know, all these other file sharing and cloud sharing apps. Okay, so that's it for episode 101 of the iPad podcast. This is Lex at Max Future. Thanks for listening. This is a chit-chat free podcast all about the iPad. Of course, you can help out by giving a positive review in the iTunes store. You can also check out the video screen capture version of this on YouTube, Blip TV, and also on Apple Things on iTunes, or go to the maxfuture.com website. So thanks for listening.
This has been a Max Future production.